Hello, welcome to this Ned Davis Research podcast where we will help you see the signals. My name is Brian Sanborn, NDR's Global Head of Investment Solutions. In this episode, we will be speaking with NDR's Chief Economist, Alejandra Grindal, regarding the productivity of the U.S. economy. Alejandra, is the U.S. economy seeing a productivity surge?
That's a great question. So if you look at Q3 2025 data, US productivity growth came in at a 4.9% annualized rate. And that was actually the fastest growth in 2 years, so quite good. And as we look at data within the fourth quarter, it could also shape up to be another pretty good quarter for productivity. So payrolls and aggregate hours worked haven't been particularly strong. But preliminary estimates of Q4 GDP, if you look at, for example, the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now model, it's coming in quite strong. So, just looking at output per input, we can get another strong number. But it's just really important to keep in mind that productivity is just calculated by taking an economy's quarterly business output per input. So quarterly readings in both can often be a little off or distorted, and even more so over this past year, just due to tariff policies. And of course, the government shutdown, which impacted the labor market. So that's why we advise assessing changes over just longer periods in general to smooth out the noise. So for example, if you compare productivity growth from a year earlier, it picked up 1.9%. Now, this is the fastest growth in a year, so pretty decent, but really not as strong as that 4.9% annualized rate, that quarterly reading I mentioned earlier, not quite as strong as that suggests. If you look at the 5-year average of the year-to-year change in productivity, it actually has been trending higher over the past decade. So that's like a good measure for, incorporating potential growth. But even that 5-year average, it's at 1.6%, which is still below its historical average.
Is AI driving the recent jump in productivity?
So, there have been a lot of rumblings that AI has been a major driver behind that jump. So we actually looked into a recent St. Louis Fed study, and they found that generative AI is increasingly being used in the workplace, with a work adoption rate of 37% in August of 2025 versus 33% a year earlier, and also encompassing about 5.7% of work hours versus 4.1% the prior year. Incidentally, work usage is lower, than personal usage. So just wanted to put that caveat on there. But based on their calculations, generative AI is very likely responsible for about 1.3% of productivity growth over the past 3 years. So overall, this suggests that AI is helping, but likely not yet the primary driver. Now, we do expect it to have a much larger role in productivity over the long term. And at the end of the day, it'll help fuel potential growth in the US.
How does US productivity compare with other developed economies?
Oh, yeah. Great question. The US has tended to be the most productive among G7 economies, and by a pretty decent margin. And it's actually reasons not related to AI. So among many factors, we attribute this to more fluid and open labor markets. Generally, the US is relatively less regulated. The US is also energy independent. A lot of other developed markets aren't. And at least historically, an openness to immigration. Keep in mind, the US attracts many of the world's brightest. So that obviously helps increase productivity. And even lower skilled immigrants free up work so that the native population can work more productively. So it's kind of win-win on both sides. Now, we do expect the US to maintain that lead. And of course, the AI boost will help. But there are a few offsets in the long term that could potentially narrow that lead. This includes trade policies, for example, the tariffs. On the margin, they reduce the benefits of comparative advantage, which technically reduces productivity. And also high fiscal debt. Holding all else constant, this crowds out private investment, and private investment also tends to be more productive.
Alejandra, thank you for your insights. NDR clients can read Alejandra's research notes in her global economics focused publications. The indicators Alejandra and the research team developed for our subscription service are also used in our model portfolios, which are available for direct delivery on TAMPs and as ETFs. For more information on NDR, we encourage you to visit ndr.com. Also, for those listening in audio-only mode, video versions, including the charts of See the Signals, are available by going to info.ndr.com/ndr-signals. Thank you for joining us as we help you to see the signals. So long.